we're going to be talking about, we're going to do our next concept, which is continuity and innovation of state forms and their interactions. So we're going to be talking about the structures of what, essentially? Governments, yeah, governments. We're going back to governments, yes.
Isn't that the thing that we don't have right now?
We actually have it as of today. Yeah. It got resolved. So we can go back to the Grand Canyon if we want to. So the question today is, which empires collapsed and which were reconstituted? What were some new state forms? Where did they emerge? Okay, if you remember from our discussion from the last period, the classical period, that was sort of this transition moving from these hunter-gatherer type societies, and then we established civilization primarily because the invention of what necessitated the establishment of civilization. What big invention? Yes, Luke? Agriculture, exactly. And then we start building up these civilizations get bigger and more powerful, and they start expanding, and we get sort of things like Alexander the Great in the Hellenistic period, the Han Dynasty in China, and what ultimately becomes a lot of these empires' big downfall? What becomes a lot of these empires' big downfall? Sean?
Environmental issues.
Environmental issues? What else, Luke?
They expand too quickly.
Yeah, they're too big. They're just flat out too big. They cover too much area. And so we remember, let's take Alexander the Great and the Hellenistic Greeks, for example, right? Although they had a huge amount of territory, did Alexander the Great necessarily control every facet of daily life in all of that territory? No. Why not? He can't. It's physically impossible, okay? So a lot of these empires broke down because they simply got too big. So we want to show today how a lot of these new empires we're going to talk about dealt with that problem of becoming too big. So, following the collapse of these empires, most reconstituted governments combined traditional sources of power and legitimacy with innovations better suited to current circumstances. Okay? And so, what we're going to do today is see basically what stayed the same and what changed. What stayed the same and what changed? What does that sound a lot like? Which essay? Yeah, there you go. There you go. Okay, what stayed the same and what changed? So, I'm going to divide you guys into groups and give you a couple scenarios that basically say, okay, out of these empires, what stayed the same in forms of these traditional forms of power? And traditional forms of power, I've given you three options. One's patriarchy, you can see down here, religion, and landowning elites. And then new innovations, I've given you three options as well. New methods of taxation, tributary systems, and an adaptation of religious institutions. Yes?
I apologize.
Yeah.
May I see Mr. DeSanto?
Absolutely, right there. So, I've given you three examples of each. And I'm going to give you an example. We're going to walk through one together. I'm going to divide you up into four groups, and then you're going to show me how you can do this. Remember, I'm less interested with you knowing about sort of the intricacies of patriarchy in the Song dynasty, right? Interesting stuff, but if you want to really know that, become a Imperial Chinese scholar when you enter college, and then you can have no friends, right? What I'm really interested is you being able to diagnose sort of the process here, okay? How governments kept sources of traditional power, and then how they use new forms and new methods of political organization to adapt to a changing world. Okay, so that being said, let's go here. First, I'm going to use the case study of the Song dynasty. The Song dynasty is the last in a series of three imperial Chinese dynasties that we're talking about in the post-classical era, which takes us from about 600 CE to 1450 CE. We have the Sui, the Tang, and then the Song dynasty. I'm going to talk about the Song dynasty. So in the Song dynasty, one way they kept a traditional form of power and legitimacy was through associating power with land ownership. Now, we've seen this story before, have we not? That people that are usually in control usually possess what? Land, exactly, okay? So, especially in Imperial China, China, this was definitely true over the course of most of Chinese history. But emerging into this sort of Neo-Confucianist movement and this new imperial China, China came across a problem in that their empire... Essentially what the tributary system was, let's take the example of Korea, right? Korea was its own state. So, there was a nation with a king that was called Korea. However, the Korean king was placed in his position by the Chinese emperor. And consistently, the Korean king sent missionaries over to China to sort of pay tribute to the imperial regime. And what this was involved, there was a whole song and dance, like you had to sort of kneel 3 times before you could, like, you know, request audience with the king. All these sort of traditions and rituals that were created to sort of reify the authority of the imperial Chinese ruler, okay? So let me ask you this. First, what's in it for a tribute state like Korea? Because they basically have their own independent nation, but it's sort of a puppet kind of nation. So why would they agree to this kind of arrangement, Justige?
For like security.
Security, and what form does that security come in?
With like the training is like military.
Yes. If Korea got in trouble, China was like, we got your back. Now, let me ask you this. What's in it for China? Why doesn't China just take over Korea and call it China? Anthony.
Because wouldn't that just be more land, some more area to cover and protect?
Exactly. So what the tributary system was essentially a bunch of affiliate states that sort of ran their own show and ran their own economic policies, but were heavily controlled by the Chinese government. So you see how this new innovation kind of addresses the concerns of old empires, in that they simply were too big and then they couldn't support themselves and they failed. But if you basically say, hey, you're going to respect my authority and kind of bow to me and, you know, pay taxes, and in exchange for that, I'm going to provide you not only with security, but what other kind of things did Korea get in the deal? Luke?
Oh, they got gifts.
Not only gifts, not gifts, but what kind of stuff? Justige?
Luxury.
Look, technologies. Look at those globes, maps, gold, silk, all this cool stuff, right? So the tributary system is an example of an innovation in political organization that was used to solve some of the old problems of empire, okay? So, what I'm going to ask you to do is sort of the same sort of exercise we just walked through. I'm going to give you an empire, and you're going to tell me basically what stayed the same in terms of traditional power. Pick one: patriarchy, religion, land-owning elites. And then, what kind of innovations did they use to sort of solve some of the old problems of empire? So new methods of taxation, tributary systems, or adaptation of religious institutions. Okay? So let's just do this right here is group 1. This right here is group 2. This right here, and Anthony, is group 3. You guys are group 4, including Nate. Okay? Let's plan on, say, about 10 minutes. 10 minutes, okay? Yes. Absolutely.